Hello, everyone, and welcome to another Cafe Con Leche, killing kindness with caffeine and cute calatheas. Uncle Gary wandered into a coffee shop and got kicked out for listening to Yoko Ono without headphones on episode of the Days Grimm. My name is Brian Michael Day.
My name is Thomas Grimm.
Who's joining us today?
Joining us this week in not the Days Grimm studio, but Honeymoon West is owner ZAK Parsons. How are you?
Technically, I'm married to the owner. Yeah. Co-founder, I think,
all
is the
technicalities. Okay,
yeah,
fair enough.
Yeah. But it's legal. It's legal. We're married.
Yeah.
It's basically half yours, right? No, I don't know how that works.
And
actually.
well, since we had you on last time, you had just bought Honeymoon West, and you were in the process of re-innovating it from Rogers Hair Academy to this beautiful place that we're sitting in recording now.
Yeah. And we're recording video, right? People can see the incredible sights and hear the sounds. We're actually closed right now, so there's not a lot of sounds going on. But yeah, 2023 was basically one big construction year, and we are very thankful to be done with that. But I got to say, I kind of miss a little bit of the chaos and some of the bonding that the team and I did when you're tackling like something of this size and all the things that can, like right behind you, Brian, one of our employees stepped through the floor, which had rotted over the however many decades of use before as we were. Ooh. She was fine. We joke. I mean, we literally bring it up like every couple weeks of, don't bring that same shirt that you were wearing because it's bad luck because you'll step through the floor again.
These are new floors. Don't break these.
We're really happy and proud of this space. We're coming up on, I think, about 9 months. So, not quite a year.
Last episode that you were on was 141. I remember shortly after that we had lunch. I actually came and helped work on like a back steps, and I got to see this place wasn't finished yet, and like the what's this room?
The roastery.
Yeah, the roastery wasn't done yet or anything like that, and to like peek in there and get to see, it's pretty cool.
Yeah. No, that was we had to kind of do it in phases, and the roastery, we needed that to function and continue to kind of roast beans, but we had this deck element, and we decided we wanted to get lunch and get to know each other a little further. And I was like, hey, can we kind of kill two birds with one stone? Do you mind helping me build this deck while we catch up a little bit? And you were super cool and game for it. And so now you're a part of the birthing of this building.
And Honeymoon has 5 locations now?
Four. Yeah, this is our fourth, and at this point, no plans for a fifth. So,
but you do miss it.
I miss the chaos a little bit. Yeah. It's honestly, for me, in fact, like, I don't know, do you guys do LinkedIn? Is that something that's like more my generation?
I did. Yeah, no, I did. But I got a lot of hawking and like
a lot of Tua.
Well, yeah, hawking and Tuaing, and no, but I would get like a lot of people trying to scalp me. Like,
okay.
I was happy.
And you didn't want it.
Yeah, and I was happy where I was at, and I would tell my boss all the time, like, "Hey, I got these 3 people that are like harassing me." So full disclosure or whatever to them. But yeah, it got annoying. The people, they come on your DMs.
You didn't parlay that into a raise or something.
No.
Do you realize how many people want me?
I've gotten several raises, so like I'm fine.
Nice.
They treat me very well. So again, I don't speak about where I work on this podcast, just for the record.
Yeah. Totally fine. Well, the only reason I brought that up is because you have to put in sort of a title, like what you are.
Yeah,
and it's always been a little bit of a challenge for me, but the label that I landed on was Chaos Pilot. I think I read that in an article somewhere, and it like really resonated to where I tend to thrive in chaotic situations, and this current year 2024 has been much less chaotic, and I find myself somewhat adrift, kind of itching for some chaos, if you will.
I get it. I think that's why I like working out so much. It kind of gives me that little bit of like, not adrenaline, but it kind of gives you a similar kind of thing to thriving.
You have a chaotic workout?
Yeah, I get kind of wild with it. You don't know if you're going to make it to the end or die, kind of like that situation.
So funny. I love that you brought that up, because for me, honestly, I work out for the exact opposite reason, or at least as I'm interpreting it, is because at least when I started last year, not working out. I actually hired a personal trainer, started hiring a personal trainer last year.
Okay.
And it was a situation where I could completely submit to somebody else and just show up and say, man, tell me what to do. And I might die.
Yeah.
He may push me too hard.
Yeah.
But it's just like, yes, sir. How far? And I'll go until you tell me to stop or my body gives out.
No, I like that. Who's your personal trainer?
His name is Joel Wilson at Be Fit on the east side, and
Great organization. Great work. I love
that
Be Fit.
new location on the east side. It's very nice.
Yeah.
Fire. So fire. Yeah, it's phenomenal.
Big fan. How much of a kickback do we get for mentioning them?
I'll talk with Joel about it, and then we'll go from there. Put in the Days Grimm promo for a 20% No, I'm joking.
Oh yeah, but the thing with chaos, like the interesting thing is I really did sort of seek that out, like a spot where I didn't have to be the chaos pilot and like. We could work on the roastery. We could work on the deck. We could work on this floor. We could work on the air conditioner. We could paint this wall. It's like so many different things. How do you prioritize? How do you pick one? And then you just want situations where you can just show up, be told what to do. Honestly, this podcast setup is actually pretty nice. You guys came in here. You're setting up the lights. You're setting up the boom. Setting up the mics.
Pretty chaotic.
I bring the hams.
Yeah,
beers.
the hams. Yeah.
It's like my job is done. You guys kind of tell me what to do.
Oh yeah.
Conversation goes, where you guys want to take it. And,
Easy peasy.
There's definitely a spot for that my wife and I have kind of appreciated.
Well, and I think
season.
sweat equity is like a whole nother thing, and like a project that's I would say honeymoon's like a passion project of yours.
Well, I mean, we are coming up on our 8th anniversary. So we started in the fall of 2016, the end of August of 2016. And, we rode through a pandemic. We had an owner join us for about a year and a half. And now expanded to 4 locations. And we have been very hands-on with the physical aspects of that, growing the business, developing the team. And we do take a lot of it personally and passionately. In fact, today as we're recording this, we're having one of our key employees, it's her last day. And she's been with us since she's been legally able to work for us. But technically, she was actually there on day 1 of our friends and family opening when she was just like 12 years old or something like that. And she's going off to college, and today's her last day. And so having people that grow with us, it makes it hard not to be passionate and care about, what you're doing and who you're showing up for day after day after day.
That's pretty sick, dude. But also, do we have to bleep any of that for child labor laws, or can we leave that in, or is that a big? Should I be concerned?
I think for a friends and family opening, I think it's
I'm
fair
just
game.
teasing.
We put her to work, as soon as we were allowed. Her father's a lawyer, so we definitely wouldn't have been, violating.
Yeah, he's got to.
We were
for sure.
Well, one thing too that I think is real cool. We mentioned last time we talked about religion a little bit, and then we also. Yeah, we went down to there was like a whole 20-minute segment in there that was just like religious talks. And I guess for people that aren't following, since then you started your own YouTube channel.
Yes. Yeah.
Outside
Interesting. Yeah. No, you're right. As we launched this location and got it open and realized that we wouldn't be jumping into opening up another location in 2024, the metaphor that came to mind for me was this idea of a mountain to climb. Like I need another mountain to climb. And the way that seemed to make sense to manifest was launching my own YouTube channel. Launching makes it sound more, intense and important.
It is an intense
than it actually
project.
No, it is no
You
small
guys
feat.
know, yeah,
it is
yeah.
no small feat.
Well, you guys have a much more advanced setup here.
You
than
say
I do,
that.
but-
I don't feel like it.
yeah.
I'll have to do some venturing around on yours. What is the name of your channel, just for the record? so
Yeah,
everyone
it's
knows?
called ZAK Parsons Projects.
Okay.
So for people who are much older than the two of you, there was a band by the name of the Alan Parsons Projects.
Project.
Okay,
Yeah,
so
yeah.
you guys, you heard of the Alan Parsons
Alan
Project?
Parsons
Yeah. And so my last name is Parsons. It seemed like an appropriate thing to sort of play on that a little bit.
Nice.
And
Clever.
also something that I've recognized in myself over the years, and something that I've questioned about objectivity is can we ever actually be objective? Can we ever actually see the truth in a situation? Or are we always sort of projecting our biases and our own experiences into what we see and experience? And so kind of calling that out and naming it as what I see are projections of what's valuable and meaningful to me.
Yeah.
Or ways that I might be bullshitting myself, honestly.
Yeah.
It opens up the conversation to allow somebody to challenge me and say, you're actually not seeing the truth here. You're projecting, and then we can sort of, recalibrate and reframe things.
It's funny you bring that up. Have you ever, I'm pretty fascinated with just science in general for the most part. And my wife was going to school for, she wanted to get into like neuroscience for a while before she landed on nursing, now having been graduated and she's a nurse. But she would always bring these cool articles home. And there was this one that she brought home for school for one of her neuro classes. And it was about objectivity of memory. What's up, Daddy? Let me get one of them. But no, it was really intriguing that, and you can read these studies. They're all over peer-reviewed articles about the objectivity of memory. But it's fascinating. Like one of the studies she brought home was a single-person study. They bring this person into the lab. They conduct the study, and the study was like a random occurrence of events. I don't remember if it was like in real time or like on an electric screen or something, but it was like an occurrence of events. And they were like, okay, they shut it off, shut it down. And they're like, what do you remember from that? And they're like, well, this, that, the third, bada, bada, bada. And they were like, okay, you scored a 99%. The 1% you missed this or whatever. And then they're like, okay, come back in a week. They come back in a week and they were like, okay, what happened? And without rewatching it, they were like, okay, now run me through the subject of events. Again, they'd get an 80%. And then they'd think, okay, well, here's what you
And then
missed.
40 years later, they write the Gospels.
That's
and
exactly what my brain was going to.
But it's funny though, because and then another fun study to read. I'm just giving people things to look up. And it's funny that you bring up objectivity and can you ever really truly be objective? Because like reality is such a strange concept just in general. But like when two people witness the same thing.
Sure, eyewitness testimony.
Then it gets really spicy.
Like that movie Vantage Point.
There's so many good articles, scientific articles, peer-reviewed articles about two people witnessing the same kind of a similar scenario in a lab, witnessing the same thing together even.
Absolutely.
And then they describe it completely differently.
I am completely convinced of the evidence that points to the fact that we never see things fully objectively.
There's no way.
Every sort of explanation of what you believe you saw needs to include that grain of salt of like, I believe that I saw this, or based on my experiences thus far, I understand this way, as opposed to someone who speaks as a matter of fact. When people say, this is the way that it is, I'm automatically putting up some caution to...
my guard's up.
Yep,
yeah,
exactly.
My guard's up for sure, because none of us know shit.
Yeah.
But okay, now an interesting question. Do you think there will ever be a day that AI can objectively tell us, these are the sequences of events as they unfolded, this is how it is? Do you think that day is ever possible?
No, because AI is based on our man's input. So like AI is going to go through and the winners of wars write the history. Even if you have the flip side of the coin, how much of the flip side of the coin is actually factual? And so like it's only going to have the input of the information that's already out there, not the input of the information that isn't shown or isn't recorded.
I think there's a limit to how much something could be even like understood as objective. And like you use the example of like flipping a coin. Sure. I think we could take digital recording devices and watch somebody flipping a coin and say, okay, that was definitely heads. We have, multiple, data points that are supporting this, and we're going to go ahead and say that's a fact. But there's just so much of the experience of life that is nuanced and that depends on how you're experiencing it or what emotional state you're in as you're experiencing it.
Or even leading up into like
Sure.
experiencing? Where were you at mentally? Like,
absolutely.
Yeah.
To the point
That's a
to where
good point.
that's such an important part of the human experience, to where it almost makes the question less valid. Not to crap on your question, but to say it's like that is part of what makes being a human unique and interesting. What makes life worth living is that it needs to be something that's experienced.
Interpreted, like interpretation, yeah.
You have to experience it and participate in it. It's not just did it happen, it was experiencing it is the point of it.
Yeah, and that's interesting. The only reason I get really pumped on that is I just read a book called Dark Matter. I don't know if you're familiar. It's science fiction. God, I wish I could remember. Blake something. He's a British fella.
Is it the one they're doing a TV show on right now? Yeah, okay.
So good.
Yeah, I've seen some of the show, but
so good.
Okay.
But basically, for the layman, the show is based around Schrodinger's cat. That's how this all starts. Cat is both dead and alive at the same time. If you're not familiar with the concept, Google it because it takes a while to explain.
Sure.
But that's interesting that like just the fact that the cat is both alive and dead, and like the objectivity of as soon as you like put your eyes on a molecule,
Yes. Yeah. You experience.
then that atom has now, this electron has now, you know what I mean? It's just like, it's a weird thing. Reality is just so fucking
Hard to
weird.
grasp.
It's so weird that an electron can be spinning up and down, but then as soon as you put something on it to record it, it's up. It just decided it's going to be up now. And it's like, it's a wild thing. That's basically where I was getting at with like,
I was
the
going to say,
objectivity.
when you started ZAK Parsons projects, or did you already have like, were you already tapped into this estuary community that's been on the rise?
No. I mean, yes and no. So I had got kind of plugged into a couple of different online communities during COVID that kind of helped me to be exposed to some new and interesting ideas. It was around this idea of sense making. So Jordan Peterson, I think somebody we may have talked about before. Maybe you guys have talked about on this channel. I know we talked about him a little bit.
You mentioned in one of your episodes that you're breaking up with him.
Yeah. I had a moment in his last conversation with Joe Rogan to where I just disagreed with his approach on a couple of different things.
Can we touch on that? Because I didn't watch the full interview.
You haven't seen it?
I've seen parts of it. That's the only reason I knew about his new book, but I haven't gone all the way through. What was the thing that you disagreed on? What was his stance?
What
was the
there
thing?
was a couple things. So if you've seen it, and people can tune out for this part if you haven't seen it, but I do encourage you to watch it. So there's almost like three parts of the conversation. And the second part is almost completely a commercial for the Peterson Academy, which is his new offering. It's an alternative to universities, and it's fine. I'm an entrepreneur. I don't begrudge anybody who's trying to make money, trying to use and he is a legit
It's like
academic.
the ultimate YouTube course. Like you see on YouTube, all these people take my course, this and that, and it's like he took literally one, his courses, but then two, his connections, his network, and had them make courses, and they're all on there. And basically, if you take one of the courses, he's trying to work out a way for you to get credit, or for these big businesses to recognize a Peterson diploma or certificate.
Is this the thing that you disagreed with?
No. I that's what I'm saying is I don't disagree with him having an entrepreneurial itch and using his very clear gift and skill in the market, which is being an academic, being a professor. Like, he's a Harvard professor. He was a University of Toronto professor. Like, this is his world. This is his business. But what he said later on in that conversation is, you know what, Joe? You know what's so great about these conversations is that I don't come in here with any sort of set agenda. We're just kind of letting things happen. We're being honest. And I'm like, come on, man.
Bro.
You came on here with this agenda. You had these clips
You had
ready
a
to load.
script.
So that was the first part.
It's like Brian's theory on freestyle rapping, and that they already have the rap in their head.
I want you guys to watch
beat.
this Harry Mack guy. You got to watch Harry Mack.
I guarantee you he's got them written down.
If he does, let's on my third visit to the show, if I get invited back, let's talk about how much you respect Harry Mack.
I got to look him up now.
He's
And he's
so
on,
good.
where do I go see
He's
him?
so
on
good.
Omegle?
I think I've seen him on Instagram.
Is he on
or
Omegle?
YouTube. he meets people on Omegle and then he posts it to like YouTube and Instagram. But that guy is like
That's how
on
Logic got
another
famous.
level of freestyle rapping. But the thing with the thing that actually bothered me more about what Jordan Peterson was saying is when he got on the transgender issue. Now, whether
he's very firm on that.
well, and that's actually what that's sort of what launched him into public consciousness is his refusal to use
in Canada,
the pronouns or excuse me, it was his refusal to submit to sort of like state mandated pronoun usage. He says if someone one-on-one or a student were to ask him, hey, here are my pronouns, this is what I'd like to go by, he's completely fine with that. It was more of like the legal mandate. That's where he sort of took his stand. That was 8 years ago or something.
It was at the university in Toronto.
Yeah, and he ended up losing his job over it. He lost his licensure. Like he's now an official culture war figure. It's not his stance that bothers me as much as how he holds his stance and how he speaks with a level of hatred and contempt.
His verbiage changes.
There's a difference between when you disagree with someone and you're curious and you kind of really want to understand why do you think the way that you think, and the way that he approaches Sam Harris, who's a famous atheist, and they've had some incredible conversations where they're genuinely trying to understand each other for the most part. That is, I believe, the right way to engage in good faith with somebody.
Is Sam Harris the individual from Islam? And they had
He's
Islam...
the AI guy.
Oh,
he's a neuroscientist, or he was a neuroscientist, but he actually he's considered one of the 4 horsemen of atheism. So 2 of these 4 horsemen have now died. So Richard Dawkins, Sam Harris, Daniel Dennett, and Christopher Hitchens were considered the 4 horsemen of new atheism.
Okay.
And in the early 2000s, they had a podcast together and talked about how atheism makes sense and everyone should be an atheist and blah, blah, blah.
Yeah.
So that's sort of what he's been famous for. And then Jordan Peterson, as he began his sort of campaign for people to take the Bible more seriously.
Yeah, he's a Christian, right? Yeah.
No. Interestingly enough, he has not crossed that threshold of identifying as a Christian yet.
He speaks on it a lot.
Oh,
though.
absolutely.
Yeah. Okay.
He waves the flag of Christianity and the Bible, but he cannot yet call himself a Christian. His wife has recently converted to Christianity, and he is an advocate for the Christian position
and
in a lot of
lessons
cases.
taught through the
I like
Bible
that.
and Christianity.
I like that.
But he can't get himself there. But when you see him talk with Sam and they disagree, there's a love, there's a respect. But in this last conversation with Joe, to take way too long to express why I broke up with Jordan Peterson, if you see the way that he approaches his opposition to this transgender moment, and I guess for him it's specifically to steel man his position, he is so hurt and opposed by minors, specifically children, having life-altering surgeries or
And he spoke out on Elon
hormones.
Musk.
Yeah, if something happens with children, he says that is so much worse than even the evils
Of Hitler.
And of the Third Reich.
A bold statement.
Right, like that's like the limit to what you could say, and he's not just saying it in some sort of objective sense. He just seems like someone possessed by an ideology, and if you've listened to a lot of Jordan Peterson, that's what he accuses his opponents of in so many different ways.
But
is
let's
being
be
possessed.
honest, we're both going to get the book.
Oh yeah, oh no, I broke up with him, but I'm still going to give him a chance.
Right.
Yeah.
He could win me back.
He's still in my DM.
But
I
I think like what you talked about though, and explaining why you broke up with him or whatever, in his conversations with Sam Harris and Jordan Peterson, kind of is like this estuary format.
Yeah.
I guess so. For people
this
that
is the
don't
second
know what
time you've mentioned it
estuary
now.
is, estuary and the layman would be like where freshwater and saltwater meet, but they don't mix.
Yeah.
Excuse me. And you were approached with this format. Do you want to?
Yeah, sure. You're right. You set me up for it, and I kind of got distracted by it. So yeah, there was. It all does kind of come back to Jordan Peterson, though. There's this guy named Paul Vanderklay who was a pastor in Sacramento, and he really fell into Jordan Peterson and saw the impact he was having. There were people who were willing to come and engage and discuss in Jordan Peterson's content that would never step foot in his church, at least not to participate in the church. They weren't interested in Christianity the way that it had been being sort of expressed through his ministries, but they were sort of interested in these kinds of Christian adjacent biblical topics as Jordan Peterson was presenting them psychologically. So he would participate in these Jordan Peterson discussion groups, and then they wouldn't just talk about Jordan Peterson. People would bring a lot of stuff about their lives, what was alive for them intellectually, even personally, spiritually. And so that sort of evolved into this format that he developed with this other guy named John Von Donk. This is out in California. And they basically created these sort of 4 rounds of a protocol to have a group conversation, a small group conversation that would reliably take people to deep places, as long as you were willing to be honest and bring forth what was alive in you on one of those kind of categories. And you're listening to the people around you, and you're agreeing to confidentiality. And we've since, in the last few months, started this in our community, and have also experienced reliably people coming together, sharing what's alive for them, and discovering a depth of connection with what were formerly strangers in a relatively quick amount of time.
I think it's a cool concept. It's like EA for deep and religious thinkers. The and is like more of the semicolon, like an and or.
And explain what EA is.
Emotions Anonymous. So it's like AA, but just emotions. And so like one thing too, we'll talk about the 4 rounds. So like the first round is literally just simply going around the circle, saying my name and maybe an icebreaker, a little bit about myself or whatever. And it goes around. And then the second round, we throw in a topic of something that touches you. We like here locally in the Evansville area, we like to say what's alive for you, what's been alive for you. And so like each person goes around and says what's been alive for them in that round. And then in round 3, it's like a group vote. So like you go around and you're like, man, I really liked, Zach's topic and Brian's topic. And then so it goes around in kind of a group vote. And I really like here lately, we've been trying to find the common thread between everybody's topics.
Yeah.
I was going to ask about that because the one that I went to, the one that I've been to, the one and only that I've been to, we kind of all had our own topics. We voted on the one that we were going to discuss, and that scared me. We voted on the one that we wanted to discuss, and then they all wound up kind of like interweaving into one another. I don't know. It was kind of interesting how that happened.
Yeah. And really what's neat about it is you don't sort of come with a topic that the group has already decided upon. Like if you imagine, and there's no more than 8 people involved in an Estuary meeting. So if you kind of imagine like the geometry of the people sitting around a table, it's not like a church necessarily where you come and that, God is at the center of this.
Yeah, I don't like that.
It's what the people all are bringing.
Yeah.
And you don't really know what the center is until you've all discussed it and brought out what was alive in you, and what was then becomes sort of alive and maybe even morphs and evolves through the conversation and sharing and finding maybe what that through line is. And then by the end, there really does feel like there's something kind of in the middle of it that invited you or brought you or connected you all there, but you didn't know what it was until you experienced it together.
To me, it's so cool because the diversity around this table, like not to name names, but we got preachers, we got atheists, we got a yogi, we have some Islamic, like it's
you had a
literally
Brian
a blend
in there.
There was a Brian, yeah.
One time.
That's
At one time.
That's a bold strategy on your part to invite this guy to anything.
Well, that is honestly part of what I think I'm excited to continue to kind of like test is what are the limits? I mean,
I think you found it with me. You were like, he's not welcome.
So far,
he's not welcome back.
Not invited back. No. Joking. Brian is obviously invited back, but like, it's 2024. It's a political, presidential year. I mean, we've got people who are probably very passionately.
It is spicy out there.
One side or the other. I mean, the culture war is, on fire right now.
It's alive and thriving.
We're not even talking about the Olympic opening ceremonies, craziness that happened with
Which
people.
is cool. I think that like for some reason that none of that gets brought up at the meetings.
Yeah.
It's all.
But it would be okay if it did, because the spirit with which we enter together really does sort of lend itself towards a type of harmony or understanding, and you are committing to listen to the other person. And going back to Jordan Peterson and Sam Harris, I think that's what made their connection so powerful, is when they first had their first conversation together, they were talking past each other. They wanted to have a 2-hour podcast, and it was about 15 minutes before they realized they didn't have the same definition of the word truth. And then they spent an hour and 45 minutes bickering over truth, and then they just give up. Then both of them listened back to the conversation and with humility recognized where they were not actually listening to each other, came back, apologized, and then every conversation since then has been amazing and has been incredible.
I have questions. I have so many questions. I had like 9 questions just pop in my head just now.
Perfect.
But
they're alive.
Staying on the Jordan Peterson thing, one of the biggest issues I do have with him is that when he meets an adversary, someone opposed, and he does this often. He has dialogue, like we've mentioned. I saw an interview that he did an open dialogue with a man of Islam faith, and he leaned pretty heavily in Christianity versus this guy's, Islam, and they had a respectable conversation. But what I do find is that sometimes I think the thing I dislike the most about Peterson is that he will like get too heated in a conversation and won't let the other person finish their point or their thought or their, foundation that they're trying to stand upon in this dialogue, and he'll just stomp over them and say, well, that's horse mess because I'm from Canada and this is how we do it here, and I'll tell you what, a boy's a boy and a girl, you know what I mean? I'm just like, let them finish what they were saying first. And that happens often whenever it's like the intent of the dialogue that you're about to listen to is A versus B. And I just find that often. Am I the only one that's experiencing that or seeing that?
Yes, but I think in the format.
I am the only one experiencing that?
No, but I'm saying I think it happened more towards the beginning of that. And now there's all kinds of these religious debates where you get several Christians on the left side of the stage, several Islamic people on the right side of the stage,
Yeah.
And there's like a middle person that's like putting on the debate. And so like if that starts to happen, I think that kind of like it's I think the conversation's more open now than strong manning the other side, if that makes sense.
Yeah, in normal dialogue, like in these normal conventional settings. But typically I just find that whenever it's him and another person, he's like, and I'm like, like my skin crawls when people do that.
I'd say I've consumed and observed enough of Jordan Peterson to have noticed several different versions of him. And I've seen him in conversations with the same people in different contexts at different stages of his sort of journey. Like the one that's coming to mind right now is John Vervaeke, who was a colleague of his at the University of Toronto. And it's someone who has a lot of respect for. And there's a conversation that they had where Peterson is almost subordinating himself to John's education or perspective or position, and just very much, well, tell me, what do you think about this? And he shuts up and he listens. And I've seen other ones to where it almost seems like he was on something, like on a drug or something.
Yeah.
And in fact, the name of the conversation is Conversation So Intense It Might As Well Be Psychedelic. And Peterson is interrupting Vervaeke almost every single sentence to where it's barely a coherent dialogue. And so I think going back into like you have to experience something. And Peterson is probably doing multiple conversations every single day. I mean, he's touring around the country, around the world, giving a public talk. He's probably hosting a conversation for his podcast, appearing on a handful of others. You know what? He just eats beef. Like, who knows how he slept the night before, how his travel was. Like, if he's cranky, you're going to get a totally different Jordan Peterson than when he's, well rested. He's done his yoga. He's, whatever.
Does he do yoga?
Yeah. Him and his wife do yoga every morning together.
I need to get into yoga. Are you doing yoga?
For Jordan Peterson. I had a yoga season and
just one season. 2019 season really took it out of me.
2015 was my yoga season, and
that was a good year.
I wouldn't mind getting back into it, honestly.
Yeah, we should do some hot yoga.
I would like it.
Let's do some hot yoga.
Are we committing to that right now?
They do it at the Y. I just learned that via the Evansville Discord Estuary.
Nice,
oh yeah, that's right.
Ton of Christians there too.
But going back on
name. That's the C in the YMCA.
I was gonna say going back on this estuary topic though is like
we're gonna keep taking you to Jordan Peterson.
Yeah,
take us back to Estuary. I love it.
I do have a ton of estuary questions, and we should hover around this for a while.
Fire them.
So one question. So are most of these meetings that we have? It seemed like 3 out of the 4. You said they get no larger than 8. So mine was a pretty small one with 4 people.
Yep.
But that being said, are they always like adjacent or parallel to Christianity?
This last one.
I'm only asking these questions because a lot of people are hearing estuary and they're like, okay, so we're meeting up. There's these 4 phases. I'm trying to approach the questions that I have now and blend them into the questions that I had before I even went to the estuary. Like I had a lot of, so the listener is like probably curious, like, okay, estuary, I get it. But like, I mean, is it always like faith parallel or adjacent? Does it kind of hover around there?
I'd honestly say yes, it tends to, but it doesn't have to. But I think for me, in my experience, it tends to because, number one, I learned it from a Christian pastor. Mm-hmm. And so when you talk about like, hey, what's alive for you? And you are somebody who sees the world through a Christian faith lens, you're going to tend to see everything and whether intentionally or not, you're going to sort of force things back into that sort of Christian space. What's most alive for you is going to be the most important thing for you, which might as well just be your faith.
Yeah.
And for me, I used to be a pastor, and even when I started my YouTube channel, it was sort of curiosity about why that was something that was still important to me and wondering maybe why I had those experiences. Could I have those experiences again? And since I was kind of the one who convened everybody in our local estuary, it unfortunately or not has a little bit of ZAKness in it. Like I invited Thomas, Thomas invited you, but it was like this whole thing where if ZAK is maybe putting this more Christian or church sort of flavor on it, that's what it's going to have, but it doesn't have to have that.
Right. And for me, I'm somebody that struggles with the religion. I don't know where I fall in this mix. I'm like in the middle of like 3, and so like all my topics are mainly around that because that's what I struggle with or trying to grasp would be like the religious side of things.
Yeah, and then that's another good follow-up question. I was about to say, are you going to open that thing or play with it all day, dude? God bless you. No, that was going to be my next follow-up question is that like if it is, if it does tend to hover around the Christianity standpoint, let's say a friend of someone who attends these estuaries, they have a friend who thinks it would be beneficial for them to come to one. So then they talk to you and you like, yeah, invite them. It's cool. But say said person is still nervous about coming because their faith is of Islam. How does that play into the situation?
I would think that is...
Is it still cool? Or
absolutely.
Yeah?
In my opinion, that would make the entire experience stronger because
right,
I think
that's
a lot
what I
of
was thinking.
what creates doubts in people's faiths or the faiths that they are brought up with maybe in childhood or even just any sort of immature faith. And I don't mean that in a derogatory way of just a faith that hasn't matured past a certain level of challenge.
Scientology, we're talking to you. Pretty immature.
Well,
You
I was
know
going
what
to
I'm
say,
saying?
there's
I'm joking.
on the east side estuaries, there's a guy that owns a shop several places down from where we host it, and I noticed in their car they have like a little Hindu or Buddhist thing in there, and I thought about
Sick,
even
dude.
like approaching them because they close shop right when we start, and I
Yeah.
wanted to be like, hey, you want to throw your input in on this?
I think that is the sign of something that is worthy of hanging on to. It's like you guys remember the second Matrix movie when that guy, I think his name
So
is
good.
Seraph.
Dude, Zach's so good at these movie recalls that like it blows my mind. If you watch one of his YouTube episodes, it's got so many movie references spliced throughout it. I love it.
Let's splice one in right here.
Yeah,
So,
Matrix
the
2.
second Matrix movie,
So
when
good.
Seraph approaches Neo and like starts fighting him, and they have like a fun little fight scene, and then all of a sudden he like stops and he's like, okay, cool. You can never truly know someone until you fought them. And it's like, wow, that's profound. That's actually true. Like, you guys are, I joked earlier watching you guys get set up. You guys have kind of like a little married couple, kind of vibe. And, and
married with
banter.
children, yeah.
You guys have gone through your shit. You guys have fought. You guys have had your little,
We don't really fight a lot. Have we had a real knockdown drag
Not
out?
a real fight.
maybe not a knockdown drag out, but
Not
but
like a physical altercation, but have we had words with one another? I don't feel like we have.
you guys have. If not, then it's close because I can feel the tension right below the surface.
I think what you're feeling is sexual tension.
that might be what it is.
yeah.
I can leave if you guys need.
It's my shorts. It really gets in my shorts and my ankle socks. I'm wearing taller and taller socks just for Tom.
My shorts are getting shorter and shorter just for Ryan.
No, all jokes aside, that I agree with you. That is a profound statement in that, like, you don't really know an individual or I guess you couldn't really say a group, but yeah, an individual.
It's
until
accepting and encouraging challenge.
Yeah.
It's not going into echo chambers. It's not going into a place where someone is going to be preaching to the choir. It's saying, okay, I think I believe this, but do I believe it when it's confronted with someone who might believe something differently?
Yeah.
And if you're going into it with that spirit of openness and saying, okay, could they have something to teach me here? Could I be projecting, truth to where it's not actually what's true, it's what's true for me, and I'm going to learn something from this person's perspective. If that's the spirit you're going into it with, you actually want more diversity of thought so that you're getting to something closer to the actual truth as much as we can even apprehend that.
People should live that way.
I feel that it is a more beneficial, humble, and hopefully more peaceful. You're not going to go to war if you're not sure that you're on the right side of something or not.
Yeah, somebody needs to talk to those folks in Jerusalem, bro. They're having issues. They're really getting to know one another. You know what I mean?
Brian
They're
won't
really
let me speak
getting
on this topic.
Yeah.
You what?
I said, Brian won't let me speak on this topic.
Yeah, you're not allowed to, bro.
Anytime I talk about it, we cut that section.
Yeah, anything that has to do with Judaism, we just keep Tom out of the mix. So anyways, that aside, I was just trying to make a funny joke. They're really getting to know each other because there's a lot of fighting.
Yeah.
All right, yeah, okay, bad joke. I got it. No, and then, okay, we should probably keep it on the estuary thing too because I had a couple other questions. Let me think.
You had 9.
Yeah, well, 9 was an exaggeration. So I asked you if it's religious adjacent, which it is. And the one that I was at was it was all Christianity, all 3 individuals.
Well, and our community is 85% Christian. Like
We're in the
people who would
Bible
identify
Belt.
as Christian. What's that?
We're in the Bible Belt.
Yeah. Like, for better or worse, we are in a Christian society and in a mostly Christian community. And so the things that are most meaningful for people will probably be Christian more often than they're not, but they don't have to be, which is why I think your idea of inviting folks who maybe don't come from that perspective would be hugely helpful, because it really comes down to what is alive for our fellow humans, the people that we do life with and do community with, which is why I think one of the powerful things about Estuary that I wasn't able to get from online communities during COVID is, like, I have Zoom relationships with people from all over the world, and some of them have been very enjoyable and fulfilling on some level. we don't do life together. We don't break bread together. We don't drink hams together, or see each other in a coffee shop or on the street.
Group hug at the end of every meeting.
Right. The group hug has been like a really cool physical manifestation of, like you were joking about, but like knowing each other.
Yeah.
Like,
no, I'm serious.
We know what each other like smells like. And
I felt a lot of energy in that hug.
Yeah.
Well, and I think one thing too is like it's still new and there's still several ways it can go. Like last one was like an all guys one, which was like a whole new level of like estuary deepness. And then we're talking about doing another one out in nature. And like just maybe like doing some grounding and like burying our feet and like
that's hot. I'm into that. I do. Like I haven't done it yet.
No socks.
Well, I used to when I was a kid. I love running. I'm real good at running. It's not something to like be proud of, but I'm good at it. Yeah, I'm pretty solid. But I grew up in the county running like barefoot. There's something about running that A, I enjoy, but B, like being barefooted in nature is super tight. I don't know. I just really dig it. So I'm about burying my feet. I want to get into that.
I think it's interesting that like you read about like Jesus washing his disciples' feet and stuff like that, and then like you don't have that like nowadays. Like you would never think, like I would never think to wash your feet.
They still do it. First off, I believe the Mormons are still washing feet. I may be mistaken, but I'm pretty sure at like certain events they do like a foot thing. They're doing feet stuff.
Well, I know when I would attend a mosque, you would remove your shoes and you would wash your feet. Yeah,
they do the feet washing stuff.
So I think on our last conversation, we talked a little bit about the men's retreat, right?
Yeah.
Yeah.
And so the men's retreat, we would focus on 4 male archetypes of king, warrior, magician, and lover.
Mm-hmm.
And one of the lover activities that we would do at the end was washing the feet of, like we would divide the group in half, and it was at random, and it was like, all right, half of you are going to wash feet, half of you are going to have your feet washed. And the ones who are getting their feet washed don't know it yet. We just say, all right, you've got to close your eyes and you've got to trust whatever happens, and that is your role. You are in the receiver's position of this act of love.
Yeah.
And you, the washers, you are in the giver's position of this act of love. And we would wash their feet. And then we debrief afterwards and say, what, tell us about the experience, and reliably, the more difficult role, what would you think it would be?
The receiving.
Dude, low key. Hold on. Low key.
Think about it.
I'm about getting my feet washed.
Yeah? It wouldn't bother you?
No, I think I could.
But washing another dude's feet might do it for you?
No, I think I'm in on that too, honestly. What would be weird for me?
Brian's got a foot fetish.
Well, what would be strange for me is like if I was just like a referee on the sideline, like watching it happen. Now it's strange.
That was my role. I was the referee. I was the facilitator of
I think that would be the least enjoyable participant of that.
It was definitely the least powerful. Yeah.
Is that something you find difficult by hosting a men's retreat? Is having to be the host?
Yeah, a little bit. I definitely, the first one that we did, I wore myself out by wanting to and kind of needing to participate in elements of it. And then the second time, Perry, who's now a friend of yours as well, part of our Estuary group, he kind of helped co-facilitate with me. And there's definitely something different that happens when you are able to step outside of it, be a referee, as opposed to participating. And you want to be able to have that same level of experience, but it's also part of the service that someone can provide. It's like, I love having a coffee shop. I love being able to host people, and sure, people could make coffee for themselves at home, but they want to come to a space that's been created and an experience that's been curated for them to experience. So
back onto the estuary though. Do you think we were talking, Tom had mentioned, you're talking about maybe doing one in the woods or something, and then maybe somewhere else. Don't do it. Do you think you would ever consider, thought that was a sneeze.
I thought it was too.
Do you think you would ever consider bringing this to a Evansville public forum?
The downside is it has to be 8 per group.
Yeah.
Or does that take away from the anonymity of everything?
The public aspect of it?
If you were to like set up some microphones at Victory Theater and bring 8 people on stage and do a live in a public forum estuary to really, and maybe the anonymity portion is has been compromised, but let's say since that's been compromised, you lean into it by getting public figures from around the city, people that are already well known. And then, you know, maybe throw half a script into it or something like, hey, here are the topics pre-game. We're going to talk about these, bada, bada, bada. But then everything else is organic and all natural from start to finish as soon as you raise curtains to the moment that curtains close. Is that something that you would ever consider possibly doing?
Yeah. Yeah, I mean, we what Thomas was referring to was there was a recorded estuary meeting that was on Zoom that I was part of a couple weeks ago that had to sacrifice the anonymity and
other than Chad the alcoholic.
Yes, yeah. So it's actually run by a guy whose life has been transformed by Alcoholics Anonymous.
Nice.
And his real name is Chad, but he goes by Chad the alcoholic. And he wears a La Luchador mask to sort of mask his identity. And he hosted and facilitated an estuary meeting for about 7 of us, I think on Zoom.
It's safe to say Chad the alcoholic has to be like the head man for this in the public forum estuary. He's got to come on stage in the, what did you call it? The what mask? The La Luchador?
The La Luchador, like literally like the Mexican wrestler.
Yeah. I'm thinking of the right thing. Yeah.
That is that you are thinking of the right thing.
He's got to be.
He wears that mask.
He's got to be the front man.
That is his sort of persona. So I think there's a place for that to model what the protocol looks like.
Yeah.
But there is a lot of power in the commitment to confidentiality.
We got to do this.
You can get a lot deeper with the confidentiality.
Yeah. I mean, like the states of honesty that we get to. I mean, even our meeting from Tuesday, like there were things shared. There were things shared in the meeting on Tuesday
that could ruin people's lives.
Yes, that it is imperative that we maintain that confidentiality, and the weight lifted from sharing that in community is part of the process of healing and understanding that this is an experience that someone else might share or might have a response to, instead of just having that experience individually. Self-loathing that goes on, self-judgment, criticality, that you just, where else are you going to be able to share something like that?
The vulnerability of it alone, just putting it out there is like something to overcome. And then also to have a group that can come around you and like lift you back up from basically feeling low by like saying a statement, I feel like.
We haven't found anything yet to where somebody has shared something that was beyond the pale. We haven't had a murderer, confess to a crime or something.
No Dexter Morgans are creeping into these yet. Okay,
yeah.
Good.
Nothing like that's happened yet. And so we can joke about it a little bit. I'm sure there are limits to what maybe is appropriate to be shared.
Yeah.
If someone was admitting to like a crime, perhaps, that might be something that we'd have to deal with. They say the same thing
with doctors, therapists.
Sure. Therapists, yeah.
Yeah, there's doctor-patient confidentiality up until the point of where they believe, and it could be a vague statement, but until they believe that you are of harm to yourself or others. And I don't know if I'm wording that correctly, but that's the gist.
Yeah.
And I know for a fact that it can be interpreted. Something you have said, you don't have to say, I'm going to go home and cut my wrist, or I'm going to go shoot this person. It could be something as vague as, my neighbor's really been pissing me off, bada, 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 annoying dog. And then, I bought some poison. And then now it's like this vague, you know what I mean? It can be interpreted however. So like, I assume that if you ran into something like that, you'd be like, maybe talk to them off to the side, like, hey, you doing all right? Or
well, and when you ask the question about it being something that could be more public, there's definitely a part of me that agrees with that and said, yeah, let's go for it. But as we have instituted it so far, we've agreed for it to be sort of a by invitation only growth so far, so that whoever does the inviting can almost kind of shepherd that person's experience and say, hey, here's what you're about to experience when they have the experience. And then, debrief with them afterwards and be like, hey, how was that? And so you don't get folks coming in with wildly different expectations and maybe, unintentionally or intentionally sort of torpedoing the whole experience for others.
Yeah, and mine wasn't like terribly like intimate to me. Like the one estuary that I went to, it wasn't like I was like really reaching and like felt like anything I had said could be like compromisable or compromising to me, and nor anyone around me that evening. So like now that you have explained it the way that you have, now I have a concern about like, I don't know that you could do a public forum, but I think that the estuary has a good outline to have like some sort of public, like you could take that and form it into it.
It would basically be certain people that would sign up for it knowing that it would be public. I feel like if you knew it was going to be a public event, your topic to bring up would be more for the eyes of the public than the eyes of the intimate small community.
Yeah. Or at least less like, I don't know how to word it, but like less
incriminating
or exposing of yourself. Yeah. You know what I mean? Or whatever. Well, I don't know the right way to word it.
I want to go back and maybe give a more nuanced version of a question you asked me earlier about, does it have to be sort of, Christian? And going back to the original experience that this pastor, Paul, had, like he committed his life to serving people in a church. So you would assume, almost by any means necessary, wants to reach people or provide experiences for them to deepen their spiritual experience. And he found within this protocol something different than what all of his church, activities were providing. And so as, we read, news about church attendance declining, or the fastest growing religious denomination is the nuns, the none of the aboves, people like, I'm spiritual but not religious. I don't want to go to church anymore. I don't get this. Instead of just having those folks, fall into some sort of nihilistic, individualistic, non-community, having a space like this to discuss things that maybe they would have previously wanted to take to church or fit in that sort of church bucket somewhere.
Or it's like the hard questions to ask at church.
Right. You don't want to ask a question that might turn you into some sort of pariah and get you disassociated or, kicked out of the church in some way. But it's a real question that people have. And instead of asking that question, what they do is they kind of peace out and no longer attend the church.
They check out. Yeah. No, that's valid. And it is very, very common. Like we joked about it at the estuary that I went to. I was like, I hate going to church. I hate it. I absolutely, I don't hate it. Hate's a strong word. I don't hate a lot of things. I strongly disdain showing up to a building to worship God. Since I find it silly.
Since like you've kind of become like a you called it not an estuary forefather, but like you're like this estuary man, like you're going to North Carolina to lead some estuaries.
Like Johnny Appleseed?
Yeah.
Yeah. I mean, I think I mentioned this before that I was a pastor. That was sort of the calling that I felt when I was a young person, and then my experiences being a pastor just didn't work out for me. And I went all the way from no longer being a pastor to no longer identifying as a Christian.
Yeah, except for you gave up atheism for Lent.
I did.
That's true.
The end of this, I did eventually.
God bless you guys.
Look at that. Cheers.
Cheers.
Drinks.
I tried to time it.
That was good. I identified as an atheist for a number of years, then identified as a humanist, and then this past. Honestly, it was around the same time as starting the YouTube project. Was this guy came up with this idea of giving up atheism for Lent, and I thought, what a great idea! Why not? I became an atheist just by sort of a whim, like sort of trying it on, and it sort of stuck. So why not try giving atheism up for Lent on a whim as well? And then on my way to a Jordan Peterson, I was going to say concert. It's not a concert. What is it? Conversation?
Jordan Peterson
Jordan
show.
Peterson concert with Taylor Swift opening up or something. Ben Shapiro opening up probably.
Yeah, pretty realistic.
On my way to a Jordan Peterson
conference.
This is my wife. She's great. For Valentine's Day, her gift to me was going to a Jordan Peterson show. But it wasn't like a gift of like, hey, we'll both go together. It was like, no. We'll drive to St. Louis. She'll hang out in the hotel and chill and take a bath. And I'll go to the Jordan Peterson show by myself. So we're driving down to St. Louis and we end up listening to a podcast of a different guy named Jordan Hall.
Okay.
Jordan Hall is the founder of this tech company called DivX. You might remember DivX.
Negative. I have no idea.
It's older than both of you guys, but it's in this sort of it's like this video. It's a thing that basically enabled videos to be viewed on the internet. Late 90s, made a bunch of money, retired early. He went to Harvard Law. This guy's like a genius.
Okay.
When I got into that whole sense-making world that I talked about before, he was called the sense-making general. He was the guy that made sense more than anybody else. Okay. Yeah. Just brilliant. About a year ago, he comes out and announces that in all of his searches to make sense and make meaning in the world, that he has found Christianity to be the best path forward and has become a Christian.
Okay.
And it blew my mind because that was a door that I had shut years ago. And I thought I was on this sense-making path, this meaning-making path with all of these folks. And all of a sudden, he's pointing back to something from my past and saying, no, I found it here.
Yeah.
So my wife and I are listening to this podcast of this guy, Jordan Hall, on our way to listen to Jordan Peterson. And she is all in. She never cares. She hates listening to Jordan Peterson, which she only has to do when I'm forcing her to. But listening to this Jordan Hall conversation, and my wife is a Christian. And so hearing him, she is hearing truth. She's like, oh, this guy just found the truth as she sees it. She's like, I'm excited that you're into this. In fact, I think you're going to talk to this guy. And I was like, no, babe, this is the sense-making general we're talking about here. He's not going to talk.
I'm just the chaos pilot. You know?
So he's on Twitter, and literally the next day, I say something like, man, I would love to talk to you about your experience. And he looks up my Twitter profile and is like, oh, coffee guy. He's like, hey, I love coffee. I'll trade you for a bag of coffee. Let's talk. And so we set up a Zoom conversation and have it a week later. And it's in Lent. And it's wonderful and amazing and in depth. And I'm just getting to ask him all sorts of questions about his Christian experience and tell him a little bit about my experience being a Christian and then stopping being a Christian. At the very end of our conversation, he says, I'm very respectful of this guy's time. I'm like, oh my gosh, thank you so much. This was so great. And I'm trying to wrap it up, thinking I need to, close this thing down. And
let him get back to being a general.
Absolutely. The general needs to go do general things.
You got troops to soldier, man.
But he stops me and he says, can I make one request? Will you pray for blank? And it was a person whose name I'm going to leave out because we talked about this person and they're not here, so I'm not going to talk about it.
Yeah.
A mutual friend, he said, will you pray for them? And I was stopped in my tracks because I don't pray. But I'd given up atheism for Lent. And so I was like, oh, wait.
Here we go.
I do. And so that was it. I was like, yeah, okay, I will. We cut cut the recording. It ends, and I'm like right there in my office, and I'm like, okay, I'm gonna pray the first time in a long time.
Yeah.
And I felt something. It was a very simple prayer. It was, God, may your light shine on this person. That was as simple and as pure as I could come up with.
Short and sweet.
And I felt somebody listen to that. I felt it was received. And then immediately I felt kind of a calling to pray for another person. And then I prayed for that person too. And then I messaged Jordan Hall, not Jordan Peterson.
Yeah.
And said, hey, this just happened. And I think someone heard it. And then this second person that came up was also a mutual friend of both of ours. And he's like, oh, yeah, you're right. Yeah, I'll pray for them too. And so since then, this is in February, Jordan Hall and I have become like prayer buddies. And not just prayer, but there's also a practice of Christian fasting during Fridays in Lent. Or maybe it's fasting off of fish, or you only eat fish. I'm actually not sure. There's different traditions that do different things.
There's so many different types of fasting.
There's fish in there, dude. No,
but
joking.
Since then, we have both fasted on Fridays ever since. And we'll send each. So I have this new practice of prayer and fasting on Fridays with this guy Jordan Hall, and sort of figuring out what I believe in the meantime. So he's not involved in Estuary. He's like a full on Christian. He goes to church. He has his whole spiritual life that is probably as traditional as anything we could imagine.
That's wild that you nabbed him up off a dang Twitter.
Well, it was the coffee. The coffee is what brought us together.
Yeah, that's a wild thing, man.
I sent you a link one time, and I'm blanking on like the reference, but it was like coffee was like what led like mysticism, or like led people together, and like the caffeine like kept like like a higher train of thought, but also brought people together. Or like you mentioned in your last ZAK Parsons projects, is like coffee brought people together, like from different regions. Like, let me try how you do your pour.
Yeah.
Let me try how you make your grounds.
There's something magical or mystical about coffee, and I don't know how it all connects. And again, I'm projecting things in. I don't know what the truth is. I don't know if there's a God out there that's listening to everything, but in that moment, it felt right and felt appropriate to believe that. And I would suspect that that's what people of real faith experience. It's like, this is real. Something is listening to me. I am being called into it. And my life does tend to be more fulfilled when I lean into that. So I'm trying to still figure out what I believe and how I should behave and where I should belong. But maybe bringing things back to Estuary. Estuary is a place where I can reliably belong.
You can ask questions and you can dialogue with complete strangers.
What I find crazy is that, like, you know, some people really look forward to going to church on Sundays. Like, Sunday's their day and they can't wait to go back to it. And I find I attend on Tuesdays is like my main Estuary day. And like, it's like Wednesday, I'm like reflecting on like Tuesday and everything that happened. And like come Thursday, I'm like, I'm ready to go back to Estuary.
Yeah.
It's like it's weird how it like works, or I don't even know how to explain it really.
Well, I think there's something really powerful about being truly seen. And for a lot of times people would go to church and feel a connection with God and feel seen or received by the pastor or by the community. And I've definitely had experiences where I would go to church and then leave, and it was as if I was never there.
Right.
You know, you can go and, you know, you're a body in a mass.
Yeah, you're in, you're out. You talked about it at my Estuary.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And, but it would be very difficult to show up to an Estuary meeting and not participate.
And not felt seen.
Yeah, at least seen. I feel like what's interesting too is like sometimes I'm like, man, I talk too much. You know, and I'm like, I go into it and I'm like, I just want to sit back and observe. And then there's like, I'm like trying to hold my words. And then there's something and I'm just like, I have to throw it out there.
I have to credit you too with the estuaries. You're very respectful with when one person is speaking, another person is not allowed to speak. I love that version of, so you really do, like we're saying that you feel seen or heard, but you really are heard. Like it's brought up in the very beginning of the meeting, hey, when someone is speaking, shut up. Yeah, just let them talk. You don't say it that way. I would if it were me because I'm aggressive, but you're polite about it. Everyone gets their turn to talk. No one speaks over one another. And I was baffled that, wait, were you at my estuary? Yeah, you were at my estuary. I was baffled that you didn't speak over a single person the entire time because he's like the champion of cutting people off.
It gives honor to listening. It makes it part of the protocol. It makes it part of your job. It makes it like what we're doing here isn't just sharing what's alive for us. That's also an important part of it, but it is making sure you're listening to somebody else. If you're coming and you're not prepared to listen, you're not experiencing something that will actually change you. You're just being an asshole who's you're the resounding gong of 1 Corinthians 13, which is like the opposite of love.
I don't know what that means, but I don't get the reference.
You get that reference?
Resounding gong?
I don't. I only know a few verses that are still in my head.
Corinthians is the one they always do at weddings.
It's the one they do at weddings.
Son of a bitch.
It would be hilarious if I'm misquoting it right now. But my understanding is that...
Oh, is this my moment to Google something?
Yeah,
dude, hold on. Yeah, let's Google
the
Corinthians.
love as a resounding gong because my understanding is if you just want to just shout the truth at somebody without love, that it's not actually received in what you
it's going to fall on deaf ears.
A gong in a bad way.
Yeah, 1 Corinthians 13:1.
Look at that. First verse.
If I speak in the tongues of men and of angels, but do not have love, I am a resounding gong or a clanging cymbal.
So just that idea of love is more foundational than truth even.
God, your references are spot on today, dude. You're on fire. How much coffee have you
It's
had?
the ham.
Or is it the hams? It's the hams.
It's the ham.
Okay. One thing I do want to bring up. Let's get. We're getting a little over an hour. I want to come back to the very beginning of the interview. We were talking about you staying busy. What did he say exactly? You were saying something about. Oh, I remember what it was. I had a question about. You were talking about staying busy and like being new to stuff, and like, I think that was right before we started talking about the estuary, but like. Other than the estuary or starting the YouTube channel, have you started anything else new? Have you challenged yourself, your body, your soul, anything else new recently? Like, I don't know, like gone
audio
skydiving
and video
in the last...
editing.
Yeah, huh?
I mean, audio and video editing is like a whole hurdle to learn.
Are you
and
doing
overcome.
the editing?
Yeah. I'm doing the editing for the YouTube channel.
God bless you.
It's not nearly as nice as what you guys do, but I do enjoy.
I'll pray for you tonight.
Thank you. Thank you.
It is not a good deal, dude. It sucks.
That's a good question. I mean, honestly, if I'm being honest, we'll treat this like an estuary, sort of thing. That is a fairly constant question for me right now. Is what should I be spending my energy on? I feel like I'm in a kind of a transition point to where we've built up our company and hired an amazing team to where the company can honestly run without me.
Which is the definition of a business.
Yeah.
In our case, it's humbling, like in a true sense. Like sometimes people use the word humbling in a way to say it's so great that I'm humbled, but it's almost humbling in a negative way of like, oh wow, I'm actually not very valuable for our company anymore. But I'm also okay with that because that just means that I'm maybe being prepared. I'm gonna get a little closer. Maybe being prepared to be called into something else. That's how I'm interpreting it. That's how I'm choosing to project meaning into it. So when you ask that question, what comes up is, oh, nothing. Pickleball, a little bit of pickleball.
Okay, now is going to be my follow-up is like, how pertinent is it as humans or just as like productive humans or someone that's always trying to, I don't know,
be better.
Yeah, I guess we always say that on the podcast, and I feel like we're wearing it out at this point. But like, as someone who is trying to constantly improve oneself, how important is it to like, I'm just gonna go suck at something new for a little bit. You know what I mean? Like, like that is the definition of humbling. Like, I'm gonna go try arena. I'm gonna sign up for an arena soccer league, and I'm gonna. Well, you're good at soccer. I suck at soccer, but I'll go do it. And I'll learn the rules, and I won't be a forward. You know what I mean? I'm going to be a wingman. I'm going to be playing a lot of defense. I'm going to hang out by the goalie. But you know what I'm saying? Like, it's important to do these new things that you suck at, right?
I think you're right. And whatever that sort of challenging aspect is, actually, as you're saying this, what's coming up to me is going back to a little bit of those 4 male archetypes: king, warrior, magician, lover. And so the warrior is the one that is probably closer to the stage that both of you guys are in right now. I would guess or presume. Probably warrior, lover a little bit.
I feel pretty aggressive right now. I'm going to lean warrior. Yeah, I don't know why.
Like that's sort of like where you sort of need to be at. And there's a lot of testosterone, kind of involved in that. And
fired up.
I'm in my mid 40s now. My testosterone's, starting to come down. And I'm trying to be open to something that's closer to that sort of king or magician sort of space.
Okay, some David Copperfield kind of card tricks and stuff.
The magician thing is interesting because it's like it's something that you have so much expertise or experience within that it maybe it's second nature to you. It's easier for you. It's more natural for you now, but it might look like magic to others.
Alchemy.
Right. I'll do something that feels second nature, but you'll be like, how the heck did he do that?
Yeah.
I look like a magician to others.
Well, with your community building, I feel like magician. The way you can bring people together in that aspect, I would say, is magical.
I appreciate that. So thank you. And it is natural to me. And so if that's something that continues to be needed and called upon, I want to be in a space to be able to do that. But it's less the type of energy that we had when we started the business, and we were scrapping, and it was, super long hours and exhausting. It's a different kind of energy. I feel that my kids, my youngest child is 16. She's driving. Like there's this whole other world. We don't have any grandkids yet, but we've got kids that are old enough that's a possibility, at some point. So I feel like I'm in just a little bit of a liminal space of get ready for the grandparent season, which, could be in the next decade for sure.
What do you think is up next for, like, what do you see ZAK Parsons projects like growing into in the next 10 months before we have you on again, or 9 months, whatever it may be?
I would hope that it's something that I get feedback from people. It's been great to get feedback from folks who've watched the conversations and have encouraged certain questions that are asked or certain topics that we get into. I do feel like what's been happening with us on the ground here in Evansville with Estuary is probably the direction we're going to continue to go in with that. I mean, we've talked about Jordan Peterson. We may never meet Jordan Peterson or Sam Harris or any of these folks to where
Inshallah,
these are people.
We meet them.
Maybe we will. But they don't live in our community.
Right.
And so there's something, even like Jordan Hall, like he doesn't live in our community. I'm not going to do life with him, but I am going to go visit him in a couple of months. And so I think for me, it's figuring out what the sort of actual real life experiencing of other people could be explored through the podcast.
Do you journal?
I don't.
I was wondering.
Not anymore. I've had a season yoga.
That was 2018 was my journal season.
I was going to say, though, like, I feel like ZAK Parsons projects is something like I want to do. So, like, I suck at writing. Like, I don't want to journal. Journaling's hard. But I would like to make separate from the Days Grimm podcast, my own video vlog that's basically like an online diary of like, this is my thought process. This is
You called it your
different things.
captain's.
Yeah, like a captain's log from Star Trek, you know, where he's like, day whatever, you know, blah, blah, blah. This happened. Whatever.
Day 65, the wife made mac and cheese again. Son of a bitch.
But I would say like, but it would be cool to sit there and go through like different clips that I share in like the Estuary Discord of like, hey, I watched this video. Here's 5 video clips from this video that meant something to me. And this is my interpretation of them.
My projection.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, I love that name. Yeah, it's good for the channel.
I lucked out. with actually sent an email to Alan Parsons. Like his management team was like, "Is it okay if I use your famous song on one of my videos?" And they were like, "Yeah, dude, whatever."
You
like,
save that
YouTube.
email and use it to YouTube.
No. They basically said you can't use it with our permission, but it's YouTube. Like YouTube doesn't care. Like. Yeah, have you guys used any copyright songs?
Yeah,
we've gotten banged up for it.
So a lot of, in my experience, because I use movie clips and I use music clips, a lot of them are completely fine with you using it because they've allowed it. And his song is one.
There
of those.
is a trick, and a lot of YouTube aficionados will tell you it is like 29 seconds.
Not only that, but you can speed or slow up the song, and
you can change the tempo. If you change the rate of speed of the track or whatever, then it's a little different. So if you change it from 182 BPM to 175, it won't register maybe. But the rule of thumb is like 30 seconds is where YouTube raises a flag. So you can get just up for everyone out there. That now you know that.
The way that I've been approaching it is if it gets flagged, I'll just edit it and delete it, and I'm just sort of trusting that if it's the right song, use it. And I'll find out when it runs through the
Sharia Allah or whatever you said earlier. I don't know.
Inshallah means God willing.
Yeah, inshallah.
I was gonna say we should take a bathroom break and then wrap up.
You gotta pee?
Yeah. For a podcaster, I have a terrible bladder. I make this joke at like every Estuary meeting.
You've used this bathroom before.
He's the opposite of Joe Rogan. Joe Rogan can hold his
dude.
bladder.
I would Ari Shafir it and pee in a bottle, but
use my coffee. No, I'm joking. Do not pull your. Probably sat down just now, didn't you? I bet you sit down when you pee.
I don't sit down when I pee. My grandpa does.
Don't lie to me.
My grandma hates the splatter. She's like 80, might be approaching 90, but she gets down on her hands and knees and cleans the floors every day. And
God
like
bless
my
her.
grandpa, male pee, splatter, you know, so like she makes them sit down.
You know the best time to sit down and pee? Actually, there's 2.
In the morning when you first get up and you're too tired?
No, in the middle of the night.
I was going to say middle of the night.
Sit down to pee.
when you don't want to turn on a light.
That. And then, obviously, after you've had sex. Because then you got like the dual spray action. So just, then you probably should go ahead and pop a squat. Or you're going to be like holding stuff to reflect it in there. All right, anyways, back to what we were saying. Let's get this podcast
I was going to say, as we wrap up.
And we're back. All right.
As we wrap up, I wanted to get some advice for somebody, 1, entrepreneurially, and then 2, somebody that's struggling with like spirituality.
So, entrepreneurially,
it's a tough word.
It is a tough word.
I'm not going to ask you to say it again.
I didn't even know if it was a word.
We talk about if you need to bring something up that's alive for you estuarially.
Also a tough word.
Also a tough word to say. So I think entrepreneurially, I think I screwed it up again. My advice is honestly, right now it's find a safe way to explore your entrepreneurial thing. Some people are in that sort of burn the boats, go all in, don't half-ass it. My advice at this point would be not half-ass it, but explore it in a way to where it's so successful that it forces you to give up your sort of foundational safety job. Like don't just go all in and expect customer response to save you. Have your customers be wanting so much from you that you actually have to give up the other thing that's not giving you life and
a safety net. Yeah. Like giving up your safety net or whatever it is, like your other 9 to 5 or whatever it may be.
Yeah. Instead of just assuming that the customers will be there, let the customers be the ones that like like I'll use my wife as an example. So we launched our coffee shop. She maintained her sort of 9-to-5 safety net job for 4 years before she was able to go sort of full time and go all in.
Whew.
And that was the right move. And I had like a contract based, safety net where I could pick up a contract here or set a contract aside there, and I could be more in or more out based on what was needed. But she had that safety net, and I think that's what worked well for us, and that's what I could like advise other people on.
And then your advice for somebody kind of out there spiritually and not sure where they lie.
1 foot in Islam, 1 foot in Christianity. His name might be Tom.
Yeah.
I don't know this man.
No. We're just completely making this up as if this is somebody
Completely
who doesn't actually
hypothetical.
exist. I do think it's helpful to challenge yourself. Again, it's leaning into this idea of that you have biases, you have blind spots, but you actually can't see them. If you think you can see your own blind spots, then by definition, they're not blind spots.
I like this because I heard a point on this of like, I don't know what my strong suits are. And they're like, well, ask your best friend what they value from you. Like, why are you their best friend? And oh, well, you're there for me or this or that. They'll give you whatever. And you're like, no, why are you my friend? And then they go like a little deeper. And those deep lining points are like what you should take next.
I think I heard something like that from Simon Sinek, where he's like, no, really pin your friends when you're asking this to the wall. And like, no, don't. Let's go deeper. Let's find what's actually the true thing about what I love about you, what I see in you that's special, what's unique. I do think that is why people don't just have their spiritual experiences by themselves, and they find something like a church or a mosque or a synagogue
or an
estuary or a sangha or whatever. Like, this is what we do. And I think what makes it valuable is having somebody else to challenge it. It's that idea of as iron sharpens iron, one man sharpens another. Like, you need this type of there's a helpful pressure that comes from you just not experiencing it all by yourself. But it has to be somebody that you trust. And I think some of that involves vulnerability, and it may involve you sharing something vulnerable with them first, or maybe even agreeing to some sort of terms before the fact of like, hey, I don't want our relationship to change from this, but I want to get vulnerable, which is a little bit of what Estuary is providing for people.
And as we wrap up, our main vulnerable question: was there ever a dark moment on these last 10 months since we've seen you? Well, since the audience has seen you, that you felt like throwing in the towel? We don't necessarily care about the moment. We care more about what pulled you through that moment and kept you going.
Yeah. I'd say for me, interestingly enough, it wasn't about the business failing. It was about a recognition of my role within the business becoming more obsolete. I think in the life cycle of any business or organization, especially when there's a lot of growth, you need someone who's pushing at the edges and saying, we need to go here next. We need to risk this. We need to push that. And it's like, I don't know, was it Facebook that had the motto of like, move fast and break things? That used to be their motto. And then it gets to a certain point where it's like, okay, we got this. We need to sort of change the motto, and then you're in sort of this sort of more maintenance mode. And let's tighten things up. Let's make sure we're doing things the right way. It's less about breaking things and more about refining things, and realizing that was not a strength that I brought to the company.
What pulls you through that?
What pulled me through it was believing that there was another mountain to climb. And also being willing to listen to my wife when she would call me back in to stuff that was needed for honeymoon.
Can you expand on the mountain thing, less metaphorically and more physically? What do you mean by that? Another mountain to climb.
Mountain?
Yeah.
What? Meaning something different. I mean, honestly, when honeymoon began, it was. She wasn't even my wife at the time, but it was her dream. It was her vision. She described what she wanted a place.
Right. We
like
talked
this.
about that in our first episode. Yeah. And you were like, oh yeah.
She's like, I was like, how can I help this person?
She was so passionate
to realize her vision. And so for me, it's a little bit more of like, okay, what's your vision? What's your calling? What's your thing that you need to do? And I'm not as brave as her to be able to know what that is and be able to say it. You guys heard of like Peter Pan syndrome? Where
I know, in fact, who Peter Pan is.
Okay.
That's about as far as I can go here.
So this is from Jordan Peterson. So who knows if it's true or not? But according to Jordan Peterson, spit take, according to Jordan Peterson, the pan in Peter Pan means everything. And what Peter Pan represents is an immature, masculine openness to everything and being unwilling to choose a path. Being immature says that, like, children have the potential to do anything. Everything is an option for them. And then as they get old, as they become Captain Hook, they become pirates and they've got this job and they are beholden to the clock and whatever, all these things that choosing a single path comes with. And so you could look at that as a negative thing and say, well, just don't choose a path. Just stay a boy forever. Clock still ticks.
I see what you're saying. That's the Peter Pan syndrome.
And you see a movie like Hook. I'm taking this metaphor way too far. But you see a movie like Hook to where Peter Pan actually matures and he makes a choice. And he says, instead of Tinkerbell, I'm choosing Wendy. Or I think her name was Moira or something like that.
No, it was Wendy.
Well, Moira was the name of his actual wife.
Oh, okay.
In the Robin Williams movie.
Oh, you're talking about, the woman that he's married to.
Yes.
Yeah, the woman.
Wendy is the character's name from the original books and everything, but then like Hook is this whole other.
He's married to Moya. Yeah.
But he made a choice, and like he has to sort of rediscover, why he made that and recommit to being a father. And it's like not just about being a husband; it's about being a father. And
you got to show up to those baseball games.
Yeah,
you got to show up to those baseball games.
Camcorder with one of your employees. So for me, it's having the courage to pick something. It's easy just to say, oh, this is your passion. Oh, I'll help you with your passion. Oh, it's your passion. I'll help you with your passion.
And that pulls you through that.
It allows me to still be Peter Pan and not have to choose something.
You're so damn alive. I feel more alive having had this conversation with you.
You should come back to Estuary.
I'm ready, dude. Thursdays for me, right?
Yeah.
Tuesdays for you. Okay. All right. I don't know, man. Do you have any last minute questions? I don't have any last minute. I think I'm tightened up.
I think this has been another thrilling episode of the Days Grimm. My name is Thomas Grimm.
My name is Brian Day.
And this has been
ZAK Parsons.
Thank you so much, sir. Thank you for having us. Thank you. Like and subscribe. Thank you, guys.